The moment my mother-in-law discovered the true ownership of her home, the initial indication of impending difficulties manifested as a contract cancellation, then one more and yet another. As the week drew to a close, an unsettling turn of events unfolded. Half of my event planning business's clients had inexplicably withdrawn, each one echoing the same nebulous apprehensions regarding dependability and fiscal soundness. I was fully aware of the mastermind lurking in the shadows. "Susan has certainly been occupied," I murmured, gazing at yet another cancellation email. Rose, my assistant, lifted her gaze from her desk, her demeanor somber. "Your mother-in-law?" she inquired. Even though we were both aware of the truth, I pivoted my laptop to reveal the latest email. She managed to persuade the Carters to call off their son's engagement party. That marks the third significant event to be canceled this month. I am Olivia Carter, and for the last 2 years, I have been at the helm of one of Denver's most thriving boutique event planning firms. Or at least I was until my mother-in-law, Susan Caldwell, chose to dismantle everything I had painstakingly constructed. The unraveling began after her son, my husband David, tragically passed away 8 months ago. Susan had always held a disdain for me, firmly believing that my marriage to David was merely a pursuit of his family's fortune. The reality of my prenup and the successful business I had cultivated independently seemed to vanish in her judgment. To her, I was nothing more than a gold digger, an unwelcome interloper in her family. Yet, her recent attempt to undermine my business marked a new low, even for her. "We need to take action," Rose urged, her voice laced with fury. "She can't just escape the consequences." A smile crept across my face as I recalled the thick envelope tucked away in my desk drawer. "Don't worry, she won't." What Susan remained oblivious to, a secret held only by my lawyer and me, was that 6 months prior, I had acquired her cherished mansion at a discreet auction. The Caldwell estate, an expansive Tudor-style residence that had belonged to her family for generations, had been covertly mortgaged years earlier by Susan's late husband to salvage failing investments. When the bank foreclosed and listed it for auction, I was there bidding through a shell company. Susan was completely unaware that she was, in essence, residing in my property. At that moment my phone buzzed. "Speak of the devil." "Hello, Susan," I replied, maintaining a calm tone. "Olivia, dear," she cooed, her voice laced with insincerity. "I recently came across some rather unsettling news regarding your small enterprise. Clients are abandoning ship at an alarming rate." "How regrettable." I could almost sense the smugness in her tone. "Indeed, it is quite regrettable," I responded with composure. "I don't suppose you have any insight on that." She released a quick, mirthless laugh. "Oh, do not hold me accountable for your shortcomings. I merely expressed my worries to a select few friends. If they decided to take their business elsewhere, well, that's hardly my fault." "Of course not," I replied, tightening my grip on the pen in my hand. "Yet, I can't help but question why you're so eager to see me fail." "Eager?" She let out a derisive laugh. "Don't get ahead of yourself. It seems the moment has come for you to embrace the truth of the situation. Devoid of David's name and the weight of his family's legacy, you are but a shadow. You ought to have accepted the money I presented and departed the town following the funeral." "Oh, indeed, her so-called generosity proposition. A sum of $300,000 offered in exchange for my departure from Denver, never to return. I had shredded it before her very eyes. "I am not leaving, Susan," I declared with conviction. "This is where I reside, where I thrive, where I exist." "We'll see about that," she retorted sharply before ending the call. I placed my phone on the surface, my hands trembling ever so slightly, a manifestation of my simmering anger. Rose observed me with keen attention. "What will you choose to do?" she inquired. I opened my desk drawer and retrieved the envelope. It was time to remind Susan that actions carry weight. Within the envelope lay the eviction notice meticulously crafted by my attorney stands poised for delivery. Per the stipulations of the auction sale, Susan had been granted the privilege of residing in the mansion as a tenant, dutifully remitting rent to what she believed was an anonymous investment firm. Yet, that arrangement was precarious, subject to termination at a moment's notice. After all that had transpired, it was time for Susan to confront the reality of her situation and discover the true identity of her landlord. With a 30-day notice in hand, I had been biding my time with the eviction papers, waiting for the opportune moment. And now Susan had she presented it to me on a silver platter. "Rose," I declared, rising to my feet, "please cancel my afternoon appointments. I need to see my lawyer." An hour later, I found myself in James Chen's office, observing him as he meticulously examined the eviction notice. "Everything's in order," he remarked, meeting my gaze. "But are you certain about this? Once we serve the notice, there's no turning back. Susan will discover that you own the house." I reflected on the countless clients she had frightened off, the fabrication she circulated about my business, the years filled with cutting remarks and thinly veiled hostility, insults. "I'm sure," I stated with conviction. "It's time Susan understood that she can't intimidate others without facing repercussions." James nodded, reaching for his phone. "I'll arrange for the process server to deliver it first thing tomorrow morning. You might want to be in a public place when she receives it." I smiled with a hint of satisfaction. "Oh, I know precisely where I'll be." The following morning, I settled into my favorite cafe, savoring my coffee and anticipating the moment. The process server was set to deliver the notice at 9 a.m. sharp. It was now 9:05. Just as expected, my phone erupted with notifications. First, the text messages, all caps brimming with fury. "How dare you? This is outrageous. You cunning little witch." Then the phone calls, which I prefer to send straight to voicemail. Finally, an email arrived. "You think you're so clever, don't you? Acquiring my family's home through some shell company. This is a new low even for you. But if you believe I'm going to let you escape unscathed, you're sorely mistaken. I have allies in high places, connections beyond your wildest dreams. By the time I'm finished with you, planning a child's birthday party in this town is an impossible task." I composed myself as I forwarded the email to James, adding it to our ever-expanding dossier of Susan's threats and meddling. Then I reached for my phone and dialed a number I had been holding onto for this precise moment. "Hello, Finley. It's Olivia Carter. Do you recall that exclusive interview you sought regarding Susan Caldwell's financial scandal?" Finley Chun, not to be confused with my lawyer, was an investigative reporter determined to unveil the Caldwell family's concealed financial issues. Until now, I had refrained from speaking out of reverence for David's memory. However, Susan had compelled me to act. "I think I'm ready to talk," I confessed into the phone. I laid bare the details of the mortgages, the debts, the auction, and how Susan had methodically sought to dismantle my business since David's passing. Finley paused, absorbing the weight of my words. "This is going to be explosive," he finally remarked. "Are you certain you're prepared for the repercussions?" I reflected on all the clients Susan had frightened away, the events we had forfeited, the employees I consider a grand performance. "I might have to lay off if things didn't turn around." "I'm sure," I replied. "It's time for the truth to come out." Just as I hung up, my phone buzzed with another text from Susan. "Meet me at the house now. We need to talk." I smiled, gathering my things. It was time for the next phase of my plan. The Caldwell estate loomed before me, its grand Tudor architecture a testament to old money and even older pride. Susan stood on the front steps waiting, her perfectly coiffed blonde hair and designer suit immaculate, as if she was about to step into a scene of high drama. She chose to attend a charity gala rather than face the woman who had taken ownership of her home. As I drew near, her blue eyes blazed with fury. "How dare you?" she hissed. "This house has been in the Caldwell family for generations." I met her gaze unshaken. "And now it's mine," I replied calmly. "Legally purchased at auction after your husband mortgaged it to cover his gambling debts." She flinched at the mention of her late husband's reckless financial decisions. "You had no right," she spat. "I had every right," I said, my voice steady and unwavering, unyielding. "Just as you felt entitled to disseminate falsehoods about my enterprise, to sway my clients, to attempt to dismantle everything I painstakingly constructed from the ground up." Susan's lips pressed into a thin line. "The distinction lies in my unwavering progress. What I engaged in was entirely lawful." I allowed that to resonate for a moment before delivering the final strike. "What you did." I inclined my head slightly. "That's termed tortious interference." Her complexion drained. She comprehended precisely what that entailed. And for the first time since our paths crossed, Susan Caldwell appeared. There was silence, a void of words. Interference loomed, its implications heavy with the potential for legal action. Susan's expression faltered for a moment, but she quickly regained her composure. The burden of proof rested on her shoulders. I retrieved my phone, the familiar sound of a recording filling the air. I had merely voiced my concerns to a handful of friends. If they opted to sever ties, that was not my responsibility. I halted the playback, locking eyes with her. I have more, I declared. Every email, every phone call, every canceled contract. My lawyer possesses it all. I noticed Susan's demeanor shift, her body tensing. What do you want? She asked, demanded, her voice trembling ever so slightly. I want you to cease your interference in my business. I expect you to reach out to every client you frightened away and confess that you lied. And remember this, Susan, David believed in me. He championed my dreams. He would be ashamed of your actions. She fixed her gaze on me, her perfectly manicured nails pressing into her palms. For a fleeting moment, a flicker crossed her face. An emotion beyond mere anger, a hint of fear. You're bluffing, she finally retorted, though her voice lacked its customary assurance. You wouldn't even think of it. Do not disclose any of this. It would tarnish the Caldwell family name. The very name you spent years convincing me I was unworthy of? I inquired, arching an eyebrow. Is it the name you believe grants you the authority to ruin the lives of others? What about that name? Once more I retrieved my phone, my fingers gliding over the screen as I navigated to my recent call log. I had just finished a call with Finley Chan from the Denver Post, I remarked, lifting the screen for her to catch a glimpse. He possesses a keen interest in exploring the ways in which the remarkable Susan Caldwell has been persistently targeting the memory of her deceased son, spouse. Her complexion lost all its hue. I warned you softly you wouldn't dare to test me. You devoted countless months to dismantling all that I have created. Did you honestly believe I would remain passive? Susan settled onto the grand front steps of the mansion, an unexpected weariness making her appear older than her 63 years. You don't understand, she whispered. This house is all that remains for me. In that fleeting instant, a spark of compassion stirred within me. In that moment, all the memories flooded back to me. The harsh whispers, the deceit, the relentless attempts to shatter my spirit. Not only myself, but anyone who had the audacity to confront her. No, Susan, you failed to grasp the situation. I crossed my arms. This house was not purchased with the intention of causing you pain. I acquired it with the foresight that one day you might overstep, and I required a means to compel you to halt. She lifted her gaze to meet mine, her eyes narrowing with intent. What do you mean? What I'm proposing is that we can come to an agreement. Susan's breath caught for a moment, yet she managed to maintain an expression devoid of emotion. Text, you may remain in the house, I continued, addressing my tenant. Under specific circumstances. Her gaze lingered on me, heavy with fatigue. What circumstances? I settled beside her, mindful to maintain a respectful space between us. Initially, you reach out to each client you may have frightened off and confess that you were not truthful. My business is thriving and completely secure. Secondly, cease the circulation of unfounded rumors regarding me. Gone are the days of phone calls and the weighty discussions with friends. And if you refuse, I merely shrugged. Then the eviction remains in effect. And thus, Finley Chun uncovers his narrative. Susan remained quiet for an extended period. She gazed out at the meticulously tended garden she had devoted herself to for years. At last, her voice broke the silence. David often remarked, "You possessed a strength I underestimated." The utterance of my departed husband's name pierced my heart with a familiar ache. David perceived the essence of my true self. I spoke softly. You never took the time to try. She glanced in my direction. Is that so? Gaze upon me. Maybe for the very first time. What compelled you to remain? She inquired about it after his passing when I presented you with the money. Why didn't you simply take it and leave? I breathed out with calm assurance. This is my home, I stated plainly. I created something tangible in this space, something significant. And to flee would have signified conceding to you. In a brief instant, a fleeting smile danced upon her lips. Your words echo his when you speak in that manner. With a smirk, I embraced my stubbornness. He must have learned it from someone, I replied, reflecting on the countless times David had shared tales of his mother's remarkable resolve. Susan rose gracefully, flicking away unseen specks from her chic skirt. It is now the moment to place those calls. Their displeasure at being manipulated is bound to surface. You have until the end of the week, I declared with conviction. I would like to be included in every email and on every call. Susan gave a slight nod, rigidly. And the house, I went on. As I mentioned, you are welcome to remain, but moving forward, your rent will be paid to me, rather than to an anonymous investment firm. I moved nearer, locking my eyes with hers. And Susan, should you ever attempt to jeopardize my business again, you'll find yourself out the door in the blink of an eye, your head spinning from the suddenness of it all. The ensuing weeks proved to be nothing short of intriguing. Faithful to her promise, Susan initiated the calls. A few clients returned promptly, filled with apologies and a sense of embarrassment for having been deceived. Some required additional persuasion, yet gradually, consistently, the business started to show signs of recovery. Even more astonishing was the nuanced change in Susan's demeanor. The cutting remarks ceased. The icy glances diminished in frequency. Then one day, roughly a month following our confrontation, she appeared at my office without warning. I require your assistance, she stated, her discomfort evident. I arched an eyebrow. With what? The garden club is preparing for its annual charity gala, and our usual event planner has just withdrawn. I gazed at her, a flicker of doubt crossing my mind, questioning whether this was a cleverly laid trap. You would like me to organize the garden club gala? She nodded with a certain rigidity. You're the finest in your field, she confessed, though the admission seemed to cause her discomfort. Everyone agrees, even she paused for a moment. I must confess, your work is truly remarkable. Coming from Susan Caldwell, this was nearly a proclamation of unwavering respect. I suppressed a smile. I desire total creative autonomy, I declared. Unwavering clarity, free from doubt in my choices. With a swift nod, she acquiesced. In haste. Yet, she suggested, with a slight clearing of her throat, let us explore some ideas during our lunch gathering. Thus, I discovered myself engaged in weekly lunch meetings with my mother-in-law, orchestrating what would ultimately become the most successful garden club gala in recent memory. It certainly wasn't a journey without its challenges. Susan remained unmistakably herself, assertive, insistent, and utterly convinced of her superior knowledge on all matters. Yet, an undeniable shift had occurred. A newfound respect lingered in the air. A silent recognition that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't the gold digger she had always believed me to be. Half a year following our clash on the mansion steps, I found myself seated in my office, assessing the financial landscape of the year alongside Rose. Not only have we recovered, she reported, a grin spreading across her face as she glanced at the spreadsheet. We've seen a remarkable increase of 30% compared to last year. And I couldn't help but raise an eyebrow. That amount. The Garden Club Gala unveiled an entirely new market for us, she elaborated. I nodded, reflecting on the profound transformations that had unfolded. I conceded that Susan's connections were not as unfavorable as I had initially thought. Rose paused, contemplating the moment when they align with our goals rather than opposing them. As we discussed Susan, she delved into her desk and presented me with an envelope. She departed with this for you this morning. I unsealed it. Within lay a key accompanied by a note. Olivia, the east wing of the mansion has remained unoccupied since Mateo's passing. It appears unwise to squander the limited space when you're shelling out exorbitant rent for that cramped office in the heart of downtown. Regard this as a professional opportunity. Here you can manage your company, and at last I'll have someone to share this absurd house with. Susan. I gazed at the note, reflecting on all the moments when Susan had insisted I was an outsider in the Caldwell family home. And now she was beckoning me inside. The following day, I ventured to the mansion to examine the east wing. Susan stood in anticipation. She made an effort to seem nonchalant, yet I could sense the underlying tension in her demeanor. The illumination is quite suitable for an office, she remarked, guiding me through the various rooms. Moreover, there is ample room for your team to thrive. She was indeed correct. The ambience of the space was simply ideal. With lofty ceilings and expansive windows, accompanied by a distinct entrance for clients. It possessed an undeniable sense of rightness. This was the place where David had spent his childhood, where we celebrated our wedding reception, where we had intended to shape our destiny until destiny intervened. Susan paused for a moment, then faced me. "There's one condition," she declared abruptly, halting in the doorway. "This might just become my new workspace." I braced myself, anticipating the inevitable turn of events. "Sunday dinners," Susan continued. "If you're going to be part of this team, it would be beneficial for us to share a dinner once a week to discuss business matters, if nothing else." I gazed at her, this formidable and complex woman who had inflicted so much hurt upon me, yet was now, in her own unique manner, attempting to seek forgiveness. "I have a condition as well," I responded. "All secrets laid bare, all games put to rest. If you have an issue with me or my business, please address it directly with me." She inclined her head with a measured, deliberate nod. "I suppose that is what I deserve." Indeed, I concurred. "You do indeed." 2 weeks later, my company took up residence in the east wing of the Caldwell estate. Everyone was acutely aware of the irony. The enterprise Susan once sought to dismantle now thrived beneath her very own roof. Yet, an unforeseen event unfolded. As the weeks stretched into months, the mansion, once cold and imposing, gradually transformed into a place that felt like home. And Susan, who had once stood as my fiercest adversary, transformed into, if not precisely a companion, at the very least a valued ally. On a Sunday evening nearly a year following our clash, Susan and I found ourselves seated in the garden after dinner. The sun dipped below the horizon, stretching elongated shadows over the lawn where David and I had once envisioned a future filled with laughter and the pitter-patter of little feet. "You would have loved this, you know," Susan said softly, "observing you transform this space into something uniquely yours, witnessing the flourishing of your enterprise." Tears threatened to spill from my eyes. I'm certain he would find joy in witnessing our progress, in addition as well. After a brief pause, she extended her hand and gently clasped mine. It was the very first moment she took the step to reach out and touch. "I misjudged you, Olivia," she confessed. "It has become clear to me at this moment." A faint smile graced my lips. It is preferable to arrive tardily than not at all. Later that night, as I strolled through the mansion's corridors, I pondered the way life often veers into the unforeseen. I acquired this house as a tool, a means to retaliate against Susan's harshness. Instead, it had transformed into a bridge, a passage for two mourning women to finally comprehend one another. Upon arriving at my office in the East Wing the following morning, I discovered a small package awaiting me on my desk. Within lay my grandmother's antique brooch, the very piece Susan had perpetually insisted was merely a cheap imitation of a Caldwell family heirloom. Within the confines lay a note. "At long last, welcome to the family." I affixed the brooch to my jacket, a smile gracing my lips as I reflected on the transformation that had unfolded. Susan endeavored to dismantle my business, yet in her pursuit, she compelled us both to confront some unsettling realities. At times, the most profound triumphs arise not from transforming your adversaries into companions, rather than vanquishing them. And occasionally, just occasionally, the dwelling you acquire for retribution transforms into the sanctuary you never realized you desired. Life often presents us with unforeseen obstacles to navigate. Yet, I have come to understand that often the most significant struggles are not conquered by matching aggression with aggression. Victory is achieved by flipping the script and crafting a narrative that takes everyone by surprise. Upon acquiring this house, I perceived it as an instrument, a means to retaliate against the woman who had endeavored to dismantle my life. I never envisioned it would transform into a sanctuary of restoration, development, and renewed opportunities. Here I am, seated in an office I never imagined would belong to me, within a house that once felt like a place of exclusion. I have come to a realization. Revenge does not equate to triumph. Transformation exists. What are your thoughts on this? In your position, would you have made the same choice? Would you have stood your ground or turned away? I eagerly await your thoughts. Share your thoughts in the comments on how you cope with individuals who attempt to undermine you. What advice would you have given me when Susan was doing everything in her power to do so? Ruin my enterprise? Reflecting on the unfolding events, what guidance would you offer me as I look ahead? Above all, I hope you can draw a lesson from my narrative and weave it into the fabric of your own existence. Perhaps you've faced injustice, experienced betrayal, or been undervalued. Perhaps there are those who have sought to undermine your hard-earned achievements. However, I wish for you to keep this in mind. Your strength surpasses their expectations. Victory doesn't require the annihilation of your foes. One must simply elevate oneself beyond their reach. At times, when you are open to perceiving the broader perspective, envision this. Your most formidable challenges could very well transform into the stepping stones that guide you toward something far more significant. So, what comes next for you?